It's the final battle between humanity's greatest heroes and their demonic foe. But this time we're not following some glorified, overpowered hero. Instead, our protagonist is just another foot soldier, doing his job diligently. Being the lowly runt he is, a sharp stray laser blasts straight through his chest, a hit so powerful that he doesn't even resist, and just lets it pass through. And that wraps up his story. In his final moments, he glances around at his fellow soldiers, dead and scattered across the battlefield. As for the so-called greatest heroes, well, they're locked in an intense clash against humanity's arch-nemesis, the Liquidator. Among the heroes are 4 brave warriors, each with unique traits and flashy powers. And then, there are guys like our boy, foot soldiers, thrown in as sacrificial pawns. These guys are basically like NPCs standing in the corner with no dialogue. Their purpose? Just die. He feels pathetic about himself, thinking how little he has contributed to this war. If only he had been born with some kind of talent. But as powerful as those heroes might be, they don't stand a chance either. The Liquidator slices through them like cucumbers. Literally, a single blow is all it took to wipe them out. Turns out that monster was just toying with his prey the whole time. Humanity's fate has finally been sealed already, or at least, that's what Gray Lee thought. This is then he remembers that his heart has already been shredded into bits, and yet, he's still not dead. Next thing he knows, he's standing in the middle of the ruins. In front of him is this omnipotent being who gives zero context for what's going on. The mystery dude claims that Gray's body has already healed. But the wild part is that he healed himself using powers buried deep inside him all along. The entity goes on to further say that Gray is actually way stronger than the Liquidator, the same bastard who slaughtered all those heroes like pigs. However, he's not sure if Gray can even handle that power. So, for now, the entity lends our boy a portion of his own power, just enough to take down the Liquidator. Back in the real world, Gray's sword is instantly surrounded by mysterious energy, gifted by the all-powerful being. Without wasting time, he puts this energy to the test, to see if it's the real deal or just hot air. Turns out this power packs a serious punch. So much so that the Liquidator actually commends Gray for his strength. But it's still not enough. As Gray goes in for another strike, bam! He's sliced in half like the rest. Blood gushes from his bisected body as the Liquidator, weirdly enough, praises him again. He's the first person to push the Liquidator far enough that he had to go all out. But the Liquidator is in for another surprise. Gray isn't done yet. That blackish energy is fueling him. The lower half of his body, which was gone a second ago, has now reformed, made entirely of dark energy. Bro is going full Black Clover mode with that massive sword of his. It's a sight to behold. To think that someone could actually make the Liquidator waver. The enemy sees no other option other than to throw up a honeycomb shield to guard his sorry self. Gray doesn't even look human anymore. He crashes down with his colossal blade, and the impact sends literal shockwaves through the air. The shield shatters into glittering pieces, and Mr. Cocky ends up eating shit with the full brunt of the hit. Now the bastard is seriously wondering if the thing he's fighting is even human. Hell, he's not sure if Gray is even alive. Meanwhile, our boy is asking himself the same thing. But right now, all that matters is the fight. And yeah, this freak is tough as nails, but our boy is also determined to do the math and break this bastard down. He's not stopping until this menace is erased. He throws another wild slash, and this creepy fuck starts bleeding this creepy golden blood. In response, the freak busts out some next-level jutsu and sprouts celestial wings. Looks like he's messing with time itself. Day turns into night, with the moon glowing like a spotlight from the gods. It's pretty impressive, and Gray admits it, but not impressive enough to shake his confidence. He goes full throttle, launching a preemptive strike straight at the Liquidator's neck. But surprisingly, the sword doesn't pierce. There's some weird shield around him again. Then he starts yapping nonsense that flies straight over my head. Apparently within this plane of true dusk, nothing can hurt him. Or at least, that's what this bastard claims. He tells Gray to look up at the sky, to see just how deep in shit he really is. Well, our boy looks up out of curiosity, and sees a blinding star-like thing glowing with insane intensity. Then boom, that thing crashes down like a damn meteor and obliterates Gray from existence. The Liquidator stands victorious, staring down at the crater left behind. But thankfully, that mysterious entity from earlier shows up again, just in time to rewind everything and send our boy back into the past with an only mission, which is to save the world. By the way, that mystery man's name is Kronos. Apparently, he and the Liquidator have some kind of history, but no one is telling us what kind. So anyway, cut back to our boy, who opens his eyes in a peaceful green neighborhood right after his regression. It's quiet, calm, and honestly pretty damn photogenic. Turns out he's in his hometown, Renato Village. Not just his hometown, but the past version of it. He is almost 15 years in the past. Looks like Kronos kept his word. Gray's been sent back in time, for one final shot at saving the world. Suddenly, a stinging pain crawls through his hand. When he takes a look at his hand, he notices wounds and bandages wrapped around his wrist. Now that he thinks about it, this was the time in his life when he was basically a punching bag for Belder and his gang. But with this new shot at life, it'd be pretty pathetic if he still ended up getting bullied. Then again, there's no way he could fight those guys head on. Bro is way out of their league. In hindsight, even beating the Liquidator sounds like a dream. Anyway, he's got to figure out how to deal with these bullies, or he's doomed to relive the same suffering all over again. Seems like bro can't catch a break, or can he? He just so happens to stumble across the same assholes he's been dreading the most. Of course it's Belder and his goons. Since they've been bored lately, they've been on the hunt for our guy, eager to continue their tradition of good old-fashioned bullying, like it's their new religion. They toss a spare sword at his feet, ordering him to pick it up. Our boy stares at the sword, clueless. He still hasn't figured out what these goons are up to. After all, it's been 15 years, so memories are a bit hazy. Belder, meanwhile, assumes Gray is pretending to be clueless on purpose, so he is kind enough to remind him about their usual mock battles. Hearing that, Gray quickly tries to brush these pests off by pointing to his injured hand. He's grateful for the invite, but unfortunately, he can't join because the injury hasn't healed yet. But it looks like bro can't shake these hobos unless he picks up the sword and fights. They even assure him the swords are totally blunt, so there's barely any chance of getting hurt. Gray, however, can't shake the feeling that injury is still possible. No matter how blunt the blade, it's still a lump of iron. One wrong hit in the wrong spot could book your one-way ticket to heaven. Well, he's got a point. One gentle tap on the balls, and you'll be doubled over on the ground in unbearable pain. But these guys don't seem to get the logic behind Gray's words. Belder takes his stance, ready to strike. He hates hearing no from Gray, so he charges at him like a raging bull to start the duel. Gray was given time to grab the sword, but it's up, and Belder is already charging at him. Our boy finds it ridiculous that this dude calls it a mock battle while charging like he's pissed off at his own mother. That's when Gray remembers something a former military doctor told him. The reason his swordsmanship never improved was because of an injury he sustained as a kid. Now that he thinks about it, maybe this is the injury that changed his life forever and forced him to live like a runt. Belder comes crashing down with his blade, but Gray blurs away and dodges the strike. Seriously though, even Gray himself is shocked that he managed to dodge it. Belder's face meanwhile tightens in annoyance at seeing such impressive agility. He throws another strike which my guy dodges again. Then a quick strike aimed at his feet is also easily avoided. The bastard's trying hard to tag our boy. He's like a bloodthirsty man on a mission, determined to take his opponent down. But Gray slips through like a ninja on cocaine. At first Gray thought Belder was just slow, but then he realizes that it's not the Belder who has gotten slow, it's he himself who has gotten faster. Bro is literally dodging every strike like he owes rent. Even Belder's goons can't ignore what they're seeing. It's like Gray is a completely different person. He might not have the body he once had, but he still has the memories of every battle he's fought. With all that experience mapped in his head, his body is basically on autopilot. He barely even has to try to dodge those strikes. Then Gray grabs the sword to keep this so-called mock battle going, which isn't feeling so mock anymore. Belder is drowning in his own ego, desperately trying to crush Gray under his blunt blade. But my guy had enough. He swings his sword for the first time. The sudden jerk from his powerful swing leaves Belder's hand aching like hell. That just shows how pathetic Belder really is. If Gray is being honest, he actually feels like the loser here, duking it out with such a weakling. But he also believes that Belder doesn't deserve an ounce of pity. He's the piece of shit who bullied Gray, took away his future, and caused all that suffering. So with all due respect, Gray is going to make Belder taste his own medicine. On the next move, Gray effortlessly knocks the sword right out of Belder's hand, unarming him instantly. While Belder can only feel the humiliation, Gray realizes this dude is worse than he thought. He takes the opportunity to throw a jab, mocking Belder's incompetence with a sword. One single blow sent Belder's sword flying. Then again, being unarmed isn't a big problem. After all, Belder was the one who insisted these blunt blades were totally safe to use in a fight. Gray is going absolutely nuts, swinging the blade so fast it literally cuts through Belder's skin, causing blood to gush out. As the gravity of the situation sinks in, Belder's knees lose all strength and buckle. Wait a minute. Gray thought he was using a blunt blade, so how come this bastard started bleeding? When he looks at his blade to confirm, he finds out it's indeed a blunt one. Though if it had been a sharp sword, this dude might actually be dead. Now, let's not get distracted from the situation at hand. Gray swings the blade precisely, knocking out multiple teeth and leaving Belder's nose bleeding like crazy. My guy is towering right over this bastard, giving him chills for life. It's always pretty amusing to see arrogant pieces of shit getting rendered into sobbing messes. Seems like this much is enough to humble Belder for the rest of his life. Oh well, looks like I spoke too soon. This bastard still hasn't learned his lesson. He orders his goons to get our boy and whip his ass until he's a total mess. The goons hesitate to step forward for obvious reasons. They literally just saw their boss get beaten like a pathetic dog, so it makes no sense to succumb to the same fate, even though they have the power to avoid it. One of the guys suggests they attack in unison to overwhelm Gray. The trio quickly leaps into action, surrounding our boy from every direction. Gray, however, is nonchalant as ever. If these guys desperately want their death wish granted, my guy is more than ready. Everyone leaps at him, intending to finish him right here. At first, Gray had an ounce of sympathy for these hobos and had decided to spare them, but it looks like they won't stop until they learn their lesson. So he gives these gutter goblins what they truly deserve. Not long after, their faces are swollen like a baboon's backside after an unforgiving face massage. Once again, Gray finds it ridiculous that these crying emojis in human form used to be his worst nightmare. He recalls this group is currently students of Saria's swordsmanship dojo. Belder admits they are students of that dojo, though they haven't been visiting lately, since these soggy biscuits believed they were already powerful enough. Well, that's pretty low standards for someone who's supposed to be strong enough. Not that Gray expects much from the dojo itself. He shows interest in joining the dojo, so he wants these goons to act as his referral. Belder refuses to fulfill the request. After all, he can't imagine the consequences once his master finds out he pathetically got his ass handed to him. Gray knows exactly how to deal with these guys. He merely swings his sword around to intimidate these suckers, hinting at the worst that could happen if they don't listen. Funnily enough, this little threat works wonders. Belder is not only humbled, but that beatdown gave him the speed of a cheetah. He literally speeds down the road to reach the dojo as soon as possible, even leaving his friends behind. A while later, they enter the town. As they walk, Belder expresses his curiosity why Gray is interested in joining a dojo. Turns out this dojo has a recommendation slot for the academy. Our boy doesn't have to say more, since he's sure Belder is mature enough to understand what his main goal is. One of the guys wonders why Gray even feels the need to join an academy when he's already powerful enough. Little do these bitches know, my guy doesn't set the bar that low. He's got his own definition of enough. He vividly remembers the day all of humanity's heroes got slaughtered like pigs in the blink of an eye. And that was supposed to be the world's strongest lineup. Forget the heroes. Even he couldn't scratch that bastard with all the mysterious power he had. Only God knows how much power will be enough to defeat that bastard. Though he wasn't completely hopeless back then. The moment he got those badass dark powers, he felt like an omnipotent being that could destroy anything. The thing that held him back was a lack of swordsmanship skills. He had been relying on a few tricks he learned from the Sword Saint. If only he had spent more time training in swordsmanship, just like the Sword Saint did, he's pretty sure he could have turned the tide of the battle single-handedly. This is likely why Kronos sent him here, to grind his ass off until he's worthy to wield that dark, mysterious power again. A while later, we meet the master those goons were talking about. The group is getting an earful for picking a fight with a random civilian. And what's worse, all they got after challenging that civilian was a humiliating defeat. This intimidating woman is swordsmanship dojo instructor Saria. Belder tries to clarify they weren't actually trying to bully anyone. It was just a mere mock battle. The poor bastard ends up taking a devastating blow for his lies, a hit hard enough that he'd be on the moon with this one-way ticket. His goons are shivering in terror, wishing they could just survive this day. Nothing to be afraid of, guys. The stunt she just pulled was a little lesson she wanted to teach these fools. If they call beating up someone unarmed a mock battle, then what she did also counts as a mock battle. She points her sword right over Belder's ugly face and expels him out of the dojo immediately. Not only him, but his goons are joining him too. With that, those pathetic goons take their pathetic loser leader and walk out pathetically. She immediately twirls around, sits on her feet, and apologizes to her new recruit on behalf of her former students who caused him a lot of trouble. My guy brushes off the apology. Back to business. She's heard he wants a recommendation to the academy, to which my guy affirms it. Since Belder and his second-rate team caused him a lot of trouble, she's willing to write a letter of recommendation for him. Though before doing that, she wants him to prove his worth. Both contestants stand against each other, wooden swords in hand. Being the senior, she generously gives him the opportunity to strike first. And thus the exchange of blows begins. They move so fast that literally all they leave behind are trails of silhouettes from their fearsome strikes. All the while, Saria does her job, which is to assess our boy's capabilities. She can tell his swordsmanship is quite practical for his age. It's as if he's been through countless battles before. Now it makes sense why those bozos got their butts handed to them by a single person. His style is mostly self-taught, but every so often, his swordplay looks similar to what's taught at the academy. This likely means someone probably taught him, though his technique is still rough. One thing's for sure though, he's got a lot of raw talent begging to be tapped and harnessed to its fullest. She's basically found a diamond in the rough. Now that she's assessed him, she decides to end the duel with the last blow she's about to deliver. My guy braces himself and effortlessly parries her attack. This macabre dance once again begins. Bro is literally parrying each of her attacks like he's allergic to damage. This prompts the woman to grow anxious. The lack of hesitation on his side is throwing her off. It's like no attack she tries can falter his stance. Hell, she even starts to feel annoyed at herself. To think she has to give her all in a mock battle that was only meant to gauge this young gun's capabilities. She gets overwhelmed to the point she starts feeling fear. For a moment, he looks like some demonic entity about to unleash something massive. After surviving the last swing from our guy effortlessly, she realizes it was just a wild swing. After that crazy swing, Gray starts to feel tired and his energy level drops. The woman sees him sulking and mistakes it for a weakness in his defense. So she lunges like a feisty cat, only to find herself checkmated right on the spot. Virgil's daughter from another universe is at a loss for words. Right as she thought she had found the winning move and was ready to strike our boy down, the tables flipped on her. The broken wooden sword hits the ground, while Gray finds himself stumped. For a second there, he found his way back to the same dark power he received in his battle against the Liquidator. The fact that he used a hint of that same power now means that he still has access to his abilities, even after regressing into the past. But then, it happens. An agonizing drawback engulfs his body in so much pain that he drops to his knees. He can't even hold himself to stand, while Saria is alarmed by his condition and wants to help. Even after using a fraction of his power, Gray realizes that his current body is unable to exhibit his abilities. Still, he musters the determination to stand on his feet again, despite his body quivering. After telling her that he's okay, Gray finds himself lost in his thoughts, realizing he can hardly stand, which emphasizes just how efficient he's going to have to be with his abilities. Oh, he's also thinking about revealing the information about his power to the experienced swordmaster in front of him. Saria just looks at him dead lost and confused. Meanwhile, our boy assesses the situation with a clear head and concludes that he shouldn't tell anyone about what happened. After all, who would ever believe his ridiculous story? And it's also not like he can control his dark powers at will to demonstrate what he means. Bearing that in mind, he comes up with an innocent excuse that he simply overexerted himself. But to the swordmaster, she doesn't believe him for a damn second, thinking how ridiculous he's sounding with that excuse. There's just no way for him to have sliced her wooden sword when they were fighting with dull weapons in the first place. She's shown to be clever, to the point she understands that Gray is hiding something from her. Virgil's daughter points what's left of her sword towards our boy, causing Gray to inquire if something's the issue. Clearly, from the way he is handling his reaction, she understands that he doesn't want to talk about anything for now. Instead of challenging him on it, she respects his decision and asks about his initial interest in getting a recommendation to the academy. Our boy confirms this, sharing that he heard she could help him with that. Saria doesn't deny it either. She emphasizes that with just her authority, she can help him get a recommendation to the Royal Academy of Swordsmanship, the best educational institution their kingdom has to offer. At the same time, surprisingly, she shares no interest in recommending him to attend that institution, adding that Gray is an unfit person for the academy. Her cold words stabbed him sharper than any blade. Gray starts beating himself inside, doubting his abilities, and admitting that he's too weak. His final attack was the only remarkable thing he'd done in that battle. But wait, Saria's not finished talking. She continues her thoughts, arguing that instead of going to the Royal Academy, the kid should instead head to the World Union Academy instead. What a plot twist that is. The revelation hits him harder than Truck-kun hitting his isekai victims. Though the Royal Academy is their country's finest, the World Union Academy is the best in the entire world. The institution is deemed the pinnacle of sword mastery. Gray's at a loss for words because this same magic academy is responsible for producing the strongest battle squad, including the likes of the Sword Saint Amy. He immediately confronts Saria, questioning if he's even qualified to attend a prestigious institution like that. Funnily enough, the girl destroys his expectations, pointing out that as he is right now, there's not a shot in hell that he's getting through the door. The Swordmaster knows that even Gray is wary of his shortcomings, especially when it comes to his pathetic state of a body right now. When it comes to the Royal Academy, the kid might be able to pull off a miracle because of his sword skills alone. But that's just not the case for the World Union Academy. So yeah, dude's fucked if he doesn't train his ass off. Even Saria is astonished. The kid has miraculous talent in his swordplay, and yet he's got a stickman of a body. Doubt is starting to creep in, genuinely making Gray worry about the monstrous opponents he'll have to face against in the World Union Academy. It's not exactly a walk in the park, and with his current body, that's out of the question anyway. Seeing his sorrowful state, Saria points out how he's quick to give up, even though there are 9 whole months until the Academy's entrance exam. Again, being underconfident in his abilities, Gray thinks that even that time won't be enough for him. Despite her effort in trying to encourage him, even Saria agrees that it's too little of a time, but even then she offers him a chance. The Swordmaster wants him to trust her for the 9 months to come. because during this time, she's going to make him suffer through hell and back. Yeah, something tells me she's going to hire David Goggins and make this guy run 3 ultramarathons and do 6,000 pull-ups. Anyway, Gray admits that though he doesn't want to suffer, he doesn't have any other choice. Declaring himself ready, he hopes that the Swordmaster will take good care of him. Saria takes a liking to his forward determination. At first, you guys probably think it's a good sign that they're starting off on a positive note. But the atmosphere immediately switches to total fear, as Virgil's daughter officially announces the beginning of his hellish training. Gray's agonizing trials began. He trained like Goku and honestly ate like him too. She really is putting him through a bulking phase. He also had to deal with some questionable food, but his teacher was unrelenting and put him through everything. Their sword duels continued the same, the goal of which was to hone his techniques. And then 8 months passed, just like that. Congratulations to Gray for earning his shredded body after enduring that long training. Even Saria is out here admiring his physique. Now that they've come to this, she's got nothing in her arsenal left to offer him. He's ready to go out into the real world now. But her easygoing attitude confuses Gray, because there's still an entire month left until the entrance exam. Virgil's daughter reminds our boy that he's going to be spending a lot of time traveling to get to the location of the entrance exam. That's why he has to leave early. As a final token of gratitude, Saria hands him a bag of money, ensuring him an easygoing trip, taking care of his expenses for the month. Now that's a real teacher. As for our boy, he still doesn't feel good about the idea of leaving so soon. Her forceful approach saddens him, because he thinks his teacher is pushing him away like he's a burden. Smiling at his answer, she thinks he's complicating the situation. Suddenly, Gray brings up the rumor of an ogre's nest nearby, alarming Saria's attention. He also points out that the village is completely unsafe with the lack of security guards. The Swordmaster confirms the existence of the nest as well, as it was discovered recently. At the same time, she smiles at him, believing that nothing bad will happen. If the worst case happens, they'll just have to rely on the royal capital for help. Though Gray is worried, she thinks his only focus should be to take his exam, without any wandering thoughts. In his mind, he's convinced like hell that his teacher is lying to him, soothing him so that he doesn't have to worry. The royal capital is never going to send help to a tiny village, and when the village is raided and destroyed by the ogres, it will inevitably result in Saria's brutal death. In his original life, he learned that she died taking on the battle alone. Anyway, he doesn't tell her any of this and just accepts the situation, thanking his teacher for helping him out all this time. Gray plans to leave right away, earning Saria's smile. She and her 2 big personalities are rooting for him to pass. A few days later, we get a scene of her traversing a dangerous path to make her way to the nest. Here, skeletal remains of humans are horrifically hung on the trees as a warning. Saria is trying to track down the nest using the information she received from the scout. Spotting the trail of blood ahead, she knows that danger lurks ahead. But before she does anything, the Swordmaster is alarmed by the familiar voice of her disciple. Sitting on top of the tree branch, he questions where his beloved master is headed so late at night. Receiving a surprise entrance from him, she asks what he's doing right here when he's supposed to be focusing on the academy. Sticking his landing on the ground, he taunts her for questioning him, when he should be doing it to her instead. She lied to him when she said she was going to ignore the situation of the nest and let the royal capital handle it. Making an excuse, Saria explains that the royal capital refused to come because of their personal matters, which is why she took on the job herself. She's confident in her sword ability, believing that whatever it is in that nest, she can defeat it. Especially after receiving the report of the scout, Saria reveals that her opponent is going to be an elite ogre, and henchman monsters range about roughly 50 creatures apart from the boss. She knows fighting off the monsters will be tough because of their numbers, but it's not stopping her from going. By the way, even Gray admits that an elite ogre isn't strong, at least not enough to defeat a woman of her caliber. However, the thing about the ogres is that their unique advantage comes to their brains and overwhelming numbers. With so many of them in that nest, Saria's definitely going to die if they manage to surround and overwhelm her. Apart from that, our boy knows one thing with absolute confidence. Because of his knowledge of his previous life, letting Saria take on the mission alone is like sending her to her death. And in the end, the village will also be destroyed with no protector left. That's the dark future that he's already experienced before. With that in mind, the young disciple requests to team up with her. But his master isn't kind, stating that she's all good on her own. Instead of wasting time trying to convince her that she won't be enough, Gray cleverly tells her that he wants to gain real combat experience. He even goes on to guilt trip her, asking if she's afraid he'll become a burden in her path. Though he's smart, his master points out the ridiculousness of what he just said. Their skill difference is nearly identical right now, to the point that she struggles to fight him during their mock battles. Even with that fact in consideration, Saria reminds her disciple that a real battle is much more different. especially when you account for a monstrous nest like this one. This task involves immense danger, which is the reason she doesn't want Gray to risk his life, at least not until he has more combat experience. Her disciple is devastated to hear her conviction. After all, Saria wasn't budging in her stance. So he goes for one last resort, an idea that he wants to share with his master. At first she's surprised, until Gray straight up challenges her to a fight, promising to put her to sleep and then going on by himself to face the ogre. The situation grows tense. The disciple has just challenged his master to a real battle. His sword pointed at her. Gray awaits for her response. Realizing that her student is just as stubborn as she is, Saria admits defeat. She doesn't want him to go on alone, so she reverts to his previous suggestion of going together. All she cares about is that he returns in one piece. And yes, the one piece is real. Both of them band together and venture into the forest to confront the monsters. The night grows older, and finally, the master and the disciple discover the location of the nest. The intelligent monsters use their environment to their advantage. They made a nest that leaves no room for escape, in case someone dared to venture all the way here to challenge them. Saria thinks that the creatures must be confident in their ability, while Gray argues that it's actually more of a disadvantage for the two of them, as they'll have to fight carefully. Observing from a safe distance, she's rather surprised. The boss is nowhere to be found among the group, which makes her wonder if it's hiding in its tent. If that is the case, it's good for them, because this way, they'll be able to kill many of the henchmen before the elite ogre can confront them. To discuss battle strategy, Saria instructs her student to target the monsters from one side, while she's going to cover the other side. Executing the plan right away, both of them bolt into action with their swords in hand. The showdown begins. Before the monsters are even capable of comprehending the situation, the majestic Saria is already on top of them, executing a clean headshot, making a football of the creature's head as it flops to the ground. With the first monster down, the rest of them grumble and roar at each other in their language. The entire group is enraged and goes right into murder mode, preparing their weapons to kill the intruders. But it doesn't matter, as our boy is going beast mode with the way he's slaughtering the horde. This guy is a one-man army, cross-cutting multiple monsters all at once. The elegant Saria is all the same, showing off her impressive skills that she learned from Papa Virgil. The two of them are unstoppable. Gray and Saria perfectly cover each other's backs. Within the span of a few minutes, every single monster in sight is reduced to a body count for them. By the way, she's actually pretty impressed by Gray's unflinching determination in a real battle. He's never been more ready, warning his master to stay on her guard too. Here's the thing though, something about the situation is giving him a bad feeling. This fight has been too easy for them, way too easy in fact. Because if this is the level that Saria had to face, then she could have defeated all of them by herself, even without his help. And that brings him to a state of unease, because whatever is resting inside the tent, it's going to be much more terrifying than anything they've faced so far. Speaking of which, the creature's menacing pair of eyes beam through the dark tent, glaring at him from afar. The second Gray comes in contact with the creature's eyes, he shudders in shock. Despite his strength, he cowers and tells his master that they have to leave immediately. Even Saria doesn't get what's gotten into him all of a sudden. Without explaining anything, he roars at her to run, with so much fear in his voice that Saria doesn't question him. She simply follows his instructions and bolts right after him. As they're running along, you might be thinking that they'll escape. But nah, because their terrifying opponent literally leaps over from the skies with a massive vertical. Gray is terrified when the monster plants his feet into the ground, confronting the daring humans. Saria's expression changes to shock, pointing out how the boss monster has personally come to them for a battle. But then Gray drops a bombshell that no one even expected. This isn't the boss monster at all. Right as he's about to reveal the location of the real boss, a monstrous voice roars at them from behind. This provocative roar unleashes another horde of creatures to chase after them. The thrilling noise is deafening for Saria, but for the ogres, it has converted them into battle-hungry maniacs. Saria shivers in fear, failing to comprehend her own senses. There's a creature more terrifying, more brooding than an elite ogre, and it's commanding the entire group. Finally, Gray reveals that they're up against an ogre general. He's the real boss of the monster nest. I have to remind you guys, they're literally sandwiched right now. On one side, there's the elite ogre blocking their escape. Going back isn't an option either because a large horde awaits them along with the real boss of the nest. Saria expresses her shock, fully knowing that they can't face a monster like this even at their level. Their only chance at victory is to kill the elite ogre in front of them to escape. So she does exactly that, by charging at the beast and clashing her weapon against his. Determined to win this battle, she exploits an opening and connects a sharp cut against the creature's body. Blood spurts out of the cut, and while normally this is supposed to be a good sign, her worries only worsen when she notices that the wound is healing again. Meanwhile, Our boy is clashing against dozens of monsters all on his own, sharing his knowledge of the Ogre General's abilities. Apparently, its roar significantly boosts the strength and recovery speed of the monsters. Basically, they're up against an elite ogre on steroids. Defeating even a normal one is so difficult right now that even Gray is having a hard time. Slashing one of the monsters, he tells Saria to cover his back. He instructs her to just delay the battle for a while longer, which makes her question what kind of miraculous strategies he's got planned. To that, our boy shares that in a situation like this, they've only got one objective in sight, and that is to kill the ugliest of them all, the bastard who's hiding behind his horde. The fight for survival begins as Gray clashes his sword against one of the monsters, reflecting his annoyance at getting surrounded and flanked. He deflects the slash and finds another raging monster aiming at him. He's cutting past the enemies, focusing on making a clear path in front of him so that he can get to his objective. In carelessness, however, he uses so much strength that it literally shatters his blade. This is genuinely troublesome because now he's left without the one weapon he's confident in. He dodges the enhanced ogre's downward slash and prioritizes his attention to drawing out his spare sword. Yeah, that's the smartest main character I've seen in a while. Carrying a second sword means being prepared. Anyway, Gray is worried that his blade won't hold up for long. Coming to his rescue, his master tosses her spare sword towards him, allowing him yet another chance at victory. With both spare swords in his hand, he has a better fighting chance. But still, even this won't be enough to kill every single one of these monsters. There's just too much friction in getting to the Ogre General, while at the same time defeating its minions. Trusting his abilities, this man goes batshit crazy, unleashing a super speed slash across his enemies. His forward momentum is broken when one of the ogres tries to attack him. Luckily, he dodges and then quickly blocks the attack. The fight is fatiguing him, but he's still made significant progress dealing with the monsters in front of him. The Ogre General feels threatened and decides to unleash a second monstrous roar. To Gray's horror, the strengthened creatures have just received yet another boost in strength. This guy is not having a good time, as he's struggling even more now having to deal with them. Gray realizes that the Ogre General is intelligent enough to see through his strategy. Now that it knows what the human is trying to do, the Ogre General keeps on roaring to provoke his minions to fight. Blocking one of the strikes, Gray pushes past the monsters to bolt right ahead. A horde of monsters is ready to welcome him. Instead of facing off every single one, he efficiently cuts through the ones that are directly in his way. But even that leaves him with scratches and injuries all over his body. The bloodbath is wearing him down as he struggles to race past their endless barrage of attacks. Letting his guard down, he gets tackled by one of the ogres and pinned into place. Things seem to be looking really bad for him because the ogres have him right where they wanted. Luckily, since they're so enraged, they've lost the sense to cooperate. Because one of them slashes through one of its own kind without thinking, Gray internalizes that their strategy is to probably weaken his swords. While he's lost in thought, a Giga-Chad ogre loads a powerful fist to crush his head. It's a do-or-die situation, and he clearly can't let himself be hit, so he uses his sword to mitigate the damage. But even then, Bro is launched into the ground with a heavy crash just from the impact force. Finding himself at the edge of his life, this man still tries to get up in his broken state. That's the definition of a badass. With the previous attack destroying his spare sword, now he only has one sword left, and dozens of ogres to slay, as well as their boss. Once more, the situation isn't in his favor. In fact, it's nearly impossible to get out of this. Despite experiencing a regression, he fully understands his situation right now. Gray simply can't win, not against so many bloodthirsty monsters wearing him down. So he decides to switch his battle strategy, roaring at his master to run away while he can still make himself a decoy for her escape. Saria hears this and smiles, refusing to treat him like that. She's still facing off against the strengthened elite ogre, but Gray doesn't get why she's still determined to fight. He assures her to run away as he'll catch up soon after. But Saria refuses his suggestion, horrifically revealing that she has lost her ability to run. She's suffered a major gash on her thigh, reducing Gray's hopes to ashes. Even that approach is out of the question now. There's no other path left, except marching forward to his death. Swinging his blade in fury, he thinks about the reason why he regressed. Despite bearing such a heavy purpose, all of it is about to come to an end. Tragically, our boy's final sword also chips and shatters to pieces, and yet he finds himself in denial. Despite having lost his weapon, Gray refuses to consider this the ending to his life. If only he can use the power from the future, the terrifying ability that matched the Liquidator and was able to harm him. If he can use it even for a moment, then these monsters will be severed to pieces. Strongly envisioning the feeling he experienced that time, he loads his broken sword, entering a meditative state. And when he reopens his eyes, Gray is no longer the same weakling he was before. A single dark burning slash eviscerates the ogres, turning them to ashes with his burning black sword. Even Saria doesn't get what's going on. But it appears that our boy is still under control, as even after tapping into his dark powers, he gives her a smile of relief. In the next few seconds, Gray cuts every single creature in his sight, including the ogre general. Even his master can't comprehend what the hell just happened. She's too busy having to focus on the elite ogre in front of her. But now that the ogre general is killed, the strengthening abilities seem to have worn off. Saria understands that now, she can easily kill the beast as it no longer has any capabilities to regenerate. Using a Walmart version of Judgment Cut End, she cuts the creature down, declaring that the elite ogre is nothing without its master. They won at last. Both of them managed to stand against all the odds and won the fight. Despite having miraculously pummeled through an entire horde of ogres, Gray still apologizes for breaking her sword. Saria tells him that it's nothing compared to saving her life in exchange. She collects the sword and wants to confront him for the technique he pulled at the end. But before she can finish her sentence, our boy flops to the ground, knocked fully unconscious because of the after effects, leaving his master to shout his name in concern. The perspective cuts to the inner mind of Gray. He questions his surroundings and spots nothing but a chained floating door in front of him. He's confused until the door releases the same kind of dark energy that he uses through his ability. A sudden realization dawns over him. This is his very own power. He wonders what would happen if he manages to break the door open. After all, he could obtain the power and make it his own. Determined to try, he marches forth. But the moment he takes his first step, a deathly sensation looms over his body, frightening the ever-living soul out of him. And that's only after taking one step. Gray is so struck with fear as he retreats his way back. He doesn't have all the answers regarding the source of his power, but one thing has been made very clear to him just now. If he dares to provoke the use of his powers in his current state, there's no doubt in hell that he'll die. And that's not just a light claim, because the feeling is so horrific that it drives him to tears. From the void, a voice creeps in his mind, commending him for his decision just now. Before Gray can process it any further, he wakes up in a panicking state in his bed. His master's right beside him, glad that he's finally awake. Worried, he asks where he's at. She explains that she brought him to the village's infirmary as fast as she could. This dude was actually knocked out for 5 whole days, and I'm so glad that the author didn't say 3 days, like all the other stories. Anyway, she was afraid for his life, while Gray is having to cope with the fact that he had to recover for nearly a week because of the burden of the technique he used. Even Saria thinks that he went above and beyond in that battle. It was the definition of defying all odds. Still, she's concerned about the state of his body, and asks if he's capable of moving well. To test it out, our boy tries to lift his arm, but he can't do shit. He can barely use it after expending much energy, but with the way he is right now, there's no way he can hold a sword with an injury like this. Well, actually there's no way he'd ever be able to rub one off either, so he gotta fix this problem fast. Then there's the bruise on his arm, left after the battle. Saria grows concerned for his condition, knowing that he's unable to move his body well. Gray confirms that he's helpless right now. Even his master admits that his arm won't return to normal so soon, revealing that every single bone in his arm has been shattered to pieces. This revelation surprises our boy, because in a strange way, he doesn't feel any pain. That's actually thanks to the magic potion treatment he received. Our boy's jaw hits the floor, because these things are supposed to be really damn expensive, and she just used one on him. Saria explains that it's nothing to worry about, as the village chief personally rewarded them with it. The kid can't believe what he's hearing. He doesn't even know the village chief personally, and he's received a magic potion at his expense. Saria thinks he's dense for being unable to understand his situation. So she puts it in bold words. Gray is officially the savior and the hero of the village. Before he can grapple with what she just said, the village chief barges in to greet the boy, thanking him for everything he did. To point out the greatness of his feat, the village chief reminds the kid that an ogre general is so strong that it takes an entire town to fight against even one. That kind of creature threatened their village, and yet one boy was able to pummel his way through, carving a path and killing the monster, ensuring the village's safety. For that, the village chief is grateful. It's thanks to the valiant efforts of the boy and his master that their lives are no longer threatened. Unable to accept all the credit, Gray argues that they're exaggerating what he did. But the village chief thinks that it's him who is undermining what he did. Thinking about it for a moment, Gray reflects on the outcome. He thinks that maybe the village chief's words are right. Remember his previous life? In that life, this place burned to the ground because of the ogres raiding it down to ashes. That's the significance of his accomplishment. The leader of the village is more than happy to give him a long explanation on what makes him so great. But for now, he's focused on the boy's mission to pass the entrance exam for the World Union Academy. Speaking of which, Gray just remembered his true goal. He carelessly went to kill the creatures in the monster nest just weeks before his exam. With all the time that was wasted in between, he's only got 2 days left until the day of the exam. Oh, and by the way, just getting there takes 3 whole days on foot. His best option would be to use a horse to traverse the distance on time, but he's dead broke and doesn't have the money to afford one. Making a sudden request, he begs the village chief to lend him a horse for the journey. The good thing is that the leader was already expecting the kid to make such a request, which is why he's already prepared the best horse for his travels. Saria smiles, revealing that their original plan was to carry him, even if he hadn't woken up today. Some people truly support you despite your troubles, just like Gray's friends here, and I hope we encounter more of them in our lives too. Gray exits the infirmary, only to find the entire village roaring the boy's name and rooting for his exam. They want him to do his best, and they're not afraid of thanking him for what he did. The villagers even support him with a bag of money. Everyone donated bit by bit so that he can apply for the entrance exam and support himself at the academy. The boy is eternally grateful for the villagers, who showed him so much love with their support. He also jokingly states that it's going to be really embarrassing if he fails and comes back. But Saria is absurdly confident in her student, emphasizing that the applicants applying for the entrance exam aren't capable of beating an ogre general all on their own. But that's not the only concern. The boy is worried about his arm, as it's still messed up and there's no telling when it will heal. To that, his master argues that he should make use of his left arm in the meantime. Even though his left arm is fully functioning, it's just that he's more used to his right. But his teacher thinks with his skill level, it won't matter. Gray shares his concerns, stating that the level of the entrance exam may be overwhelming for him, to the point one arm will hinder him. But even then, Saria understands that the teachers or the examiners at the academy have a sharp eye. When they see his talent, they'll select him. The boy mounts his horse, while his teacher confidently declares that he's going to pass. That's the only outcome. Thanking her for everything she's done, he promises not to fail. Recalling how the village was razed to the ground in his previous life, he's happy that these people got a second chance alongside him. The world is already changing from this moment onwards, and he's going to make sure to influence the future with his new power. In the next scene, our boy finally makes his way to his destination. Staring ahead, he locks eyes with the grandeur of the World Union Academy. In the arena, the examiner announces the distribution of the exam tickets. All of the candidates will remain in the arena. From the looks of it, there's a large number of applicants, but only a tiny number of 20 are going to reserve a spot in class. They bicker about the changing number of seats each year, because in some years, the academy even accepted 50 people, while in rare cases, it only accepted 1. So the rules for selection aren't absolute apparently. Anyway, Professor Ariel takes the limelight and comes to the front. She addresses the examinees and explains that they'll have to collect the paper being presented. With a snap of her fingers, a vortex of yellow opens, releasing magical energy and automatically manifesting the tickets in each examinee's hand. Our boy collects his ticket. His examinee number is 513 for the fencing course. Professor Ariel adds that their ticket shares only the most critical details, but it's nothing to be worried about as the process is the same each year. She also confirms that the academy doesn't care about one's age or gender, their nationality or class. In other words, they quite literally don't give a flying fuck if you're an attack helicopter or not. They don't even care enough to know their names. The candidates who are destined to pass will be asked for further information, but for the total examinees here, it doesn't matter. Professor Ariel even confirms that it's fine if they offer a fake name, once again proving the academy doesn't care. Anyway, trouble seeks our boy again, because he came here without his sword today, and yet he's placed in the fencing course. It makes him question the system's legitimacy. Professor Ariel continues, hilariously stating that she assigned each person a course based on their looks. I know she's supposed to be perceptive or something, but it's just funny how 1 minute ago she was talking about discrimination, and then she goes on to say this. Ariel is fine with correcting course details in case she got them wrong. Even the examinees think that it's impossible to assign a course based on sight alone, especially when there's so many of them. They strongly suspect that the academy must have investigated them beforehand, so that's how they know. The possibility of mind-reading magic also comes up. Professor Ariel doesn't address any of their concerns. All she's noticing is how no one is complaining about the assigned course. So next, she decides to reveal everyone's exam schedule. The detail is imprinted on the ticket at once. Gray is nervous, because he's scheduled to have his exam on the first day, not allowing him any time to let his arm heal. Ariel reveals that this exam will only be conducted once and it will decide everything. If a candidate is late, immediate disqualification will be the only outcome. She also reminds them that their schedules are strict and won't be manipulated or disputed upon request. It's bad news for Gray, who is struggling with his recovery. He's begging for his body to pull a miracle and heal him tomorrow. The next day arrives, and what do you know? Poor guy's arm didn't even heal a bit. He's got no choice but to take the exam in this condition. Gray's examinee number is called, and he frustratingly steps forth. He tries to calm himself in an effort to remain optimistic about the situation. Assessing his left arm, he doesn't appear to have any issues, and he can also move his right arm if he exerts enough strength. His current strategy is to sharply observe the examiner's moves and discover a winning strategy from that. He's watching a match between a candidate and an examiner. The applicant blindly rushes to attack, but by the end of his attack, the examiner is unfazed and casually stands, waiting for his next move. The candidate drags his sword for yet another slash, but even that strike is helpless. It gets blocked, and not just that, the examiner deflects his blade before sending him flying with a final blow. With his body hitting the ground, the examiner concludes the result of the exam, instructing him to exit the venue. You guys might be thinking that maybe Gray has found something, but the hilarious part is how this man literally gives up and accepts that he's about to get his ass cooked. His number is called to step into the arena. Gray reflects his chances, realizing that he clearly can't beat an examiner that annihilated a candidate even bigger than him. Inside the arena, our boy is granted the freedom to make the first move. Despite that, he fully understands that this battle will be one-sided. Even then, he's got to make some kind of impression. The fight begins with Gray rushing to strike. He remembers his master's advice, who told him to make use of his entire body to deliver a potent slash, rather than just using his arms. Channeling her advice into motion, he thinks that the only way he can cope with the loss of his right arm is to use his other muscles instead. And so he delivers the first swing, which the examiner easily dodges. Even now, Gray finds himself struggling to fight in his usual style. After all, even though he's trying to make up for his right arm, it still doesn't change the fact that he's at a major disadvantage here. The examiner retaliates by trying to cut him down. But to Gray's astonishment, the sword is moving far too slow. It's as if he can read its trajectory without having to rush. So our boy actually blocks the attack successfully, still feeling the weight of the examiner's force behind the attack. At the same time, he judges that the examiner's technique isn't as refined as Saria. So if he can just focus on the techniques he learned from her, there's a chance he may be able to exploit an opportunity and carve an opening. With that strategy in mind, Gray rushes in full force in an effort to overwhelm the instructor. Oh, and the instructor is actually being pushed back. His speed is his own demise. Gray finds himself becoming confident, realizing that he can easily take down this examiner. The words of his master flash through his mind again. Their blades clash once more, but Gray overwhelms his opponent with a full deflect, ready to finish the battle with his new confidence.